The Great Hall of the Galaxy Council was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. Its walls stretched across 3 kilometers of pure crystal, glowing with soft blue light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. 47 different alien races had sent their representatives to this place, and today they had gathered for a single purpose: to pass judgment on humanity. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood at the center of the chamber, feeling very small beneath the towering seats where the elder races looked down at her. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines on her face from decades of diplomatic service. Behind her stood her small team of aides, including a young man named Kevin Porter, who had only joined the diplomatic corps 2 years ago. This was not the introduction to galactic politics he had expected. The Velthari High Speaker rose from his seat. He was an insectoid creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light like black mirrors. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke, and the translation device turned his words into cold, precise English. The species known as humanity has been brought before this council to answer for crimes against galactic order, he announced. The charges are as follows: unauthorized expansion beyond designated territorial boundaries, development of weapons technology above your permitted classification, and the crime of ambition beyond your station. Lisa felt Kevin tense behind her, but she kept her own expression calm. They had known this was coming. For the past decade, humanity had been growing too fast, learning too quickly, spreading too far. The elder races had watched with growing unease as human colonies sprouted across a dozen star systems. As human scientists made breakthroughs that should have taken centuries, as human ships began appearing in corners of the galaxy where they had no business being, the Morthakai representatives spoke next. Unlike the Velthari, the Morthakai had no physical form that humans could understand. They appeared as shifting patterns of geometric light, constantly folding and unfolding in ways that hurt the eyes to watch. Their voice came from everywhere at once. We have reviewed the evidence. Human vessels were detected in the restricted zones on 14 separate occasions. Human weapons research has produced devices capable of destroying planetary bodies. Human population growth exceeds all projections and threatens to destabilize regional demographics within 3 generations. Lisa stepped forward. May I speak in our defense? The High Speaker's mandibles clicked with what might have been annoyance. You may. The evidence presented against us is either fabricated or taken out of context, Lisa said, her voice steady and clear. Our ships entered the restricted zones because we were not informed of their boundaries. Our weapons research is purely defensive, developed in response to the Kreth, Dominion's attacks on our colony at Vega Prime, and our population growth is simply a natural result of our species, biology, and our success at establishing stable colonies. Excuses, rumbled the Torvath delegate, a massive creature that resembled a pile of animated rocks. Your kind always has excuses. The council has already reached its decision, the High Speaker announced. The evidence is sufficient. Humanity is guilty on all charges. A cold weight settled in Lisa's stomach, but she forced herself to remain standing straight. And the sentence? The High Speaker seemed to take pleasure in his next words. Total exile. Humanity will immediately withdraw from all colonial holdings. Your species will be confined to your home star system. It's the one you call Sol. Permanent interdiction barriers will be erected at the boundaries of your system. Any human vessel attempting to cross these barriers will be destroyed. Any species found providing aid to humanity will face the same punishment. Kevin could not stop himself from speaking. That's a death sentence. You're condemning us to slow extinction. The Morthakai pulsed with cold light. Your species has proven too dangerous to coexist with civilized beings. You breed too fast, learn too fast, expand too fast. Left unchecked, you would consume the galaxy. This is the merciful option. There were those among us who argued for immediate sterilization of your home world. Lisa felt something harden inside her. She had spent her entire career believing in diplomacy, in peaceful coexistence, in the possibility of understanding between different species. In this moment, she felt that belief die. "You will regret this," she said quietly. "Not because we will seek revenge, but because you have made a terrible mistake. You think you understand humanity. You do not." The High Speaker made a gesture of dismissal. "You have 50 standard days to evacuate your colonies and return your population to Sol. After that time, the barriers will be activated." This session is concluded. 8,000 light-years away, on a planet called Earth, Admiral Samuel Drake watched the broadcast with a room full of the most powerful people in human civilization. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists, all staring at screens showing the Council's judgment. Drake was 61 years old, a career military officer who had fought in 3 interstellar conflicts and negotiated the end of 2 others. His face was weathered and hard, his gray eyes cold and calculating. He had never trusted the elder races, and now he felt no surprise at their betrayal, only a grim sense of confirmation. "They've made their choice," he said into the silence that followed the broadcast. "Now we make ours." President Maria Delgado turned to face him. She was a small woman with sharp features and sharper intelligence. Elected 2 years ago on a platform of peaceful expansion and cooperation with the galactic community. That platform had just become worthless. "What choice do we have?" she asked. "They have fleets that outnumber ours 1,000 to 1. Technology that makes our best weapons look like toys. We cannot fight them." "No," Drake agreed. "We cannot. Not yet." General Philip Hughes, commander of Earth's defense forces, leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Admiral?" Drake stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights spreading to the horizon. Billions of people out there going about their lives, not yet knowing that everything had changed. "They expect us to give up," he said. "They expect us to accept our cage, to slowly decline and eventually die out. That is what every other species in their history has done when faced with exile. But they have never exiled humans before." He turned back to face the room. "We have 50 days to bring our people home. We will use that time well. We will evacuate every colony, yes. But we will also strip those colonies of everything useful. Technology, resources, knowledge. We will bring it all back to Sol. And then," President Delgado asked, "and then we survive. We adapt. We grow stronger." Drake's eyes were like chips of ice. "They have given us a prison, but they have also given us something else. Motivation. A clear enemy. A reason to push ourselves beyond every limit we ever imagined." He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. "They think they have ended humanity's story. They are wrong. They have only begun it." In the council chamber, the elder races congratulated themselves on solving the human problem. They did not notice the look in Lisa Grant's eyes as she was escorted from the hall. They did not see the quiet determination that had replaced her diplomatic mask. They had made their judgment. Now they would live with the consequences. 3 years had passed since the barriers went up. 3 years since humanity had watched the shimmering walls of exotic matter seal them, inside their home system like animals in a cage. 3 years of what the elder races expected would be despair, decline, and the slow death of hope. They were wrong. Earth had changed. The old divisions between nations had not disappeared overnight, but they had faded into the background as a new unity took hold. When every human being shared the same enemy, the same prison, the same desperate need to survive, the arguments about borders and resources and ideology seemed very small indeed. Dr. Claire Watson stood in the heart of the largest research facility ever built, a vast underground complex beneath the Rocky Mountains that stretched 4 kilometers in every direction. She was 44 years old, with red hair that had begun showing streaks of white from stress and too many sleepless nights. Her eyes, however, burned with a fire that had only grown stronger since the exile began. "Run it again," she told her colleague, Nathan Price, a thin man with nervous hands and a brilliant mind for theoretical physics. Nathan nodded and entered the commands. On the screen before them, a simulation played out for the 100th time. A small object surrounded by a field of calculated energy, folding space around itself, slipping through the fabric of reality like a needle through cloth. "The math still works," Nathan said quietly. Every time we run it, the math works. But the Veltri proved centuries ago that dimensional folding is impossible. The energy requirements alone would require more power than a star produces in a year. Claire shook her head slowly. The Veltri gave up. They tried the obvious approaches, failed, and decided it could not be done. But we do not have the luxury of giving up. We have to find another way. She pulled up a new set of calculations on her screen. What if we are not trying to fold space in the conventional sense? What if instead of pushing through the dimensional barrier, we find a place where it is already thin, a weakness we can exploit? Nathan stared at the numbers scrolling across the display, eyes widened. That would reduce the energy requirements by a factor of 10,000, maybe more. But how do we find such a weakness? We keep looking, Claire said simply. We keep working. We do not stop until we find it. In orbit above Earth, Commander Derek Shaw supervised the construction of humanity's new fleet. The old ships, designed for peaceful exploration and limited defense, had been stripped down and rebuilt from the core out. The new vessels were sleek and deadly, built for a single purpose that no one spoke aloud, but everyone understood. His second in command, Lieutenant Amy Brennan, floated beside him as they watched construction drones assemble the latest hull section. She was young, barely 30, but she had proven herself as one of the finest tactical minds of her generation. Production is ahead of schedule, she reported. At current rates, we will have 200 combat-ready ships within 18 months. But Commander, I have to ask, what is the point? These ships cannot cross the barriers any more than the old ones could. Derek turned to look at her. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that might have been hope or might have been madness. Dr. Watson's team is close to something. I cannot tell you the details, but if they succeed, these ships will matter very much. And if they fail, then we will have 200 ships full of people who refuse to give up. That has to count for something. On the surface, society had reorganized itself around the single goal of survival and eventual escape. Schools taught physics and engineering alongside traditional subjects. Factories that once produced consumer goods now manufactured components for research, equipment, and ships. Every resource, every mind, every hour of labor bent toward the common purpose. President Maria Delgado addressed the global population on the 3rd anniversary of the exile. She stood before a crowd of hundreds of thousands in what had once been called Washington, D.C., but the broadcast reached every corner of the planet. 3 years ago, we were told that our story was over. We were told that humanity had reached too far, dreamed too big, grown too strong. We were told that our punishment was to sit in this cage and wait to die. She paused, letting the words settle over the crowd. They were wrong about us. They've always been wrong about us. We're not a species that accepts limits. We're not a species that gives up when faced with the impossible. We're the species that looked at the stars and said we would reach them. We are the species that faced extinction 100 times and survived each time through nothing but stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The crowd began to cheer, softly at first, then growing louder. They gave us a cage. We will turn it into a launching pad. They tried to break our spirit. They only made it stronger. And one day, when they have forgotten about us, when they believe we have withered and died, they will look up and see us standing among the stars once more, not as prisoners, not as exiles, but as equals or more. The roar of the crowd could be heard for miles. In a secure room beneath the Capitol, Admiral Drake met with his intelligence chiefs. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. What are our long-range sensors showing? He asked. Captain Daniel Moore, a quiet man with a talent for gathering information, pulled up the latest data. The Council has lost interest in us, sir. They check the barriers once every few months, but there's no active monitoring. They believe we are contained, and therefore no longer a threat. Good, Drake said. Let them believe that. What about internal conditions? Morale is high. Production exceeds all targets. The population has united in ways we never could have achieved under normal circumstances. Ironically, the exile may have been the best thing that ever happened to us. Drake nodded slowly. The Veltri thought they were punishing us. Instead, they removed all the distractions that were holding us back. No more competing with other species for resources. No more diplomatic games. No more pretending to be less than we are." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They gave us exactly what we needed to become what they always feared we would become. And what is that, sir?" Drake looked at the map showing the Sol system, humanity's prison and humanity's home. "Dangerous," he said. "Very, very dangerous." In her laboratory, Claire Watson stared at a new set of readings from a long-range sensor sweep. Her hands were shaking. "Oh, Nathan," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nathan, come look at this." He hurried over and looked at the screen. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Is that what I think it is?" he finally asked. Claire nodded slowly. "A dimensional weakness. A thin spot in the fabric of reality. And it is not just any weakness." She pointed at the energy readings. "There is something on the other side, something vast. A whole realm of space that does not exist in normal physics." Nathan sat down heavily. "The elder races do not know about this. No, they do not. Physics tells them it cannot exist, so they never looked for it." Claire's eyes were bright with tears and triumph. "We found it, Nathan. We found our way out. Not back into their galaxy, but somewhere else entirely. Somewhere they cannot follow." She stood up and reached for her communicator. "Get me Admiral Drake," she said. "Tell him we have something he needs to see." The long night was about to end. Dawn was coming for humanity. The 7th year of exile began with humanity holding its breath in a research station at the edge of the solar system, beyond the orbit of Neptune. A small, unmanned probe sat ready to make history. Dr. Claire Watson stood in the control room with Admiral Drake, Commander Shaw, and a dozen of the most important scientists and military leaders in human civilization. Her hair had gone almost completely white now, and deep lines marked her face, but her hands were steady as she prepared the final sequence. 7 years of work come down to this moment," she said quietly. "If the calculations are correct, the probe will slip through the dimensional membrane and emerge in the space we have designated the outer reach. If they are wrong, the probe will be torn apart at the atomic level." Admiral Drake nodded. "And if it works, then we have found our escape. Not through the barriers they built around us, but around the barriers entirely. Through a door they do not even know exists." She looked at the assembled faces and saw hope and fear in equal measure. These people had dedicated their lives to this moment. Everything depended on what happened in the next few seconds. "Begin the sequence," she ordered. Nathan Price entered the commands. On the view screen, the probe designated Pioneer began to glow with a strange light that seemed to exist in colors the human eye was not designed to see. The space around it twisted and folded, bending in ways that hurt to watch. For one terrible second, the probe seemed to stretch into infinity. Then it vanished. The room was silent. Seconds passed that felt like hours. Claire watched the sensor, readings, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. A signal appeared, weak at first, then growing stronger as the receivers calibrated. "Contact," Nathan announced, his voice breaking with emotion. "We have contact. The probe has emerged intact on the other side. It is transmitting data," erupted in cheers. People who had maintained strict military discipline for years were suddenly hugging each other, crying, laughing. Admiral Drake allowed himself a rare smile. Claire simply stared at the screen, watching the data scroll past. The readings from the outer reach were unlike anything in human experience. The space they operated on, different rules. Energy flowed in patterns that should have been impossible. Matter behaved in ways that defied conventional physics. "It is beautiful," she whispered, "and it is empty.
Oh.
No other species has ever been there. It is ours." Over the following months, the probe sent back more and more information about the outer reach. It was vast beyond imagining. It's larger than the entire Milky Way galaxy. It contained resources in quantities that made the richest systems in normal space look poor by comparison. And most importantly, it was completely inaccessible to the elder races. Their physics told them the dimensional membrane could not be crossed. Their science insisted that the outer reach could not exist. They would never look for it, never find it, never follow humanity there. Commander Derek Shaw was chosen to lead the first manned expedition. He stood before his crew of 500 volunteers, all of them knowing they might never return. "We are about to do something no human has ever done," he told them. "We are going to leave our universe entirely and enter a realm that should not exist. Some of you may be frightened. That is acceptable. Fear is natural. But remember why we are doing this." He looked out at the faces before him, young and old, soldiers and scientists, engineers and doctors. All of them had chosen to take this risk. "We are doing this for the 8 billion people back on Earth who are still trapped in that cage. We are doing this for the children who will be born in freedom instead of imprisonment. We're doing this because humanity does not accept limits, does not give up, does not surrender to those who think they have the right to decide our fate." Lieutenant Amy Brennan stood at his side, now promoted to full commander and serving as his second. She had aged well in the years since the exile, growing into a woman of quiet confidence and iron determination. "The fleet is ready, sir," she reported. "All 12 ships are fully loaded with supplies, equipment, ENT, and colonization materials. If we find what we hope to find, we can begin building immediately." Derek nodded. "Then let us make history." The fleet entered the dimensional fold one ship at a time. From outside, they seemed to twist and stretch before vanishing entirely. From inside, the experience was stranger still. Derek felt as though reality itself was peeling away, revealing something beneath the surface of existence that humans were not meant to see. Then it was over, and they emerged into the outer reach. The first thing Derek noticed was the light. The stars here burned in colors he had no names for, casting strange shadows across his ship's hull. The space between the stars was not black, but a deep purple that seemed to pulse with hidden energy. "All ships report in," he ordered. One by one, the 12 vessels confirmed their arrival. All crew members were alive and healthy. All systems were functioning normally. "We made it," Amy said softly. "We actually made it." Derek opened a channel back to Earth. The transmission would take time to reach them, bouncing through the dimensional membrane. But it would get there. His commander, Derek Shaw of the Pioneer Fleet. "We have successfully crossed into the outer reach, all personnel and equipment intact. I am looking at a sky full of stars that no human has ever seen. The sensors confirm vast quantities of usable resources within reach. We are beginning planetary surveys now." He paused, looking out at the strange and beautiful cosmos spread before him. "Tell the people of Earth that we found our new home. Tell them to start building more ships. The door is open." The first planet they surveyed was unlike anything in normal space. Its atmosphere was breathable, without modification, and its soil was rich with minerals that could support both farming and industry. They named it Haven, and construction began within days of landing. Back on Earth, the news spread like fire. For the first time since the exile, people dared to believe that freedom was possible. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, offering to join the next expedition. Factories doubled their production of ships and supplies. President Delgado authorized the largest construction project in human history. 100 colony ships, each capable of carrying 50,000 people, would be built over the next 5 years. The first wave of true colonization would begin as soon as they were ready. Admiral Drake watched the preparations with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The elder races had no idea what was happening inside their cage. They believed humanity was slowly dying. Cut off from the resources and opportunities of the wider galaxy, they could not have been more wrong. He asked Claire during one of their regular briefings. "If current projections hold, we will have 1 million people established in the new realm within 10 years. Full industrial capacity within 15. By year 20, the outer reach colonies will be capable of operating independently of Earth entirely." Drake nodded. "And our technology?" Claire's eyes gleamed. "The physics of the outer reach allow things that are impossible in normal space. We are already making discoveries that will advance our capabilities by centuries. By the time we are ready to reveal ourselves to the galaxy, we will be more powerful than any of the elder races." "Good," Drake said. "Let them continue to believe we are broken. Let them forget about us entirely. And when the time is right, we will remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place." In the outer reach, Commander Shaw watched the first buildings of Haven rise from the alien soil. Human voices filled the air, human laughter, human hope. Children who had been born in the prison of soul would grow up here, under strange stars. In a realm of infinite possibility, they had been exiled from the galaxy. They had responded by building something better, and they were just getting started. 20 years had passed since the exile. The elder races had long since stopped paying attention to the prison. They'd created a round soul. They had other concerns now: border disputes, resource conflicts, the slow decline that seemed to affect all species that had grown too comfortable with their power. Humanity had become nothing more than a footnote in their histories, a problem that had been solved and forgotten. They had no idea what was growing in the realm next door to their reality. Governor Desiro Morris stood on the observation deck of New Horizon, the capital city of humanity's presence in the outer reach. The city had grown beyond anything the first colonists could have imagined. 3 million people now called it home, living in buildings that floated on manipulated gravity fields and traveled through streets that existed in 3 dimensions instead of 2. The skyline glittered with lights and colors that did not exist in normal space. Her aide, Peter Walsh, approached with the latest reports. He was a young man who had been born in the outer reach, part of the first generation to grow up knowing nothing of the prison their parents had escaped. To him, the strange physics of this realm were simply normal. "The census data is complete," he announced. "Total population across all outer reach colonies has passed 2 billion. We have 47 major settlements and hundreds of smaller communities. Industrial output exceeds Earth's peak production by a factor of 12. Rachel nodded, looking out at the city. And Earth itself? Stable at 6 billion. The population chose to split, some staying in the old home, others making new lives here. Both communities are thriving. It was a remarkable achievement. 20 years ago, humanity had been trapped, dying slowly, cut off from all hope of expansion or growth. Now they had spread across a realm larger than the galaxy itself, developing technologies that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors, building a civilization that rivaled anything the elder races had created in millions of years. Admiral Samuel Drake had lived to see it all, though he was 81 now and his body was failing even as his mind remained sharp. He commanded the human fleet from his flagship, a vessel called the Dawn that was larger than any ship the elder races had ever built and powered by engines that drew energy directly from the dimensional substrate itself. 10,000 warships formed the military arm of the new human civilization. Each one was capable of destroying a planet. Together, they represented a force that would have been unthinkable during the exile years. "Our scouts have detected increased activity along the Council's border regions," reported Colonel Andrea Hughes, daughter of the old General Hughes, who had passed away 5 years earlier. She had inherited her father's tactical brilliance and added her own innovations to human military doctrine. "What kind of activity?" Drake asked, his voice weaker than it once was, but still commanding attention. "The Velthari are fighting the Kreth Dominion over resource rights in the outer systems. The Morthakai have withdrawn into isolation, apparently suffering some kind of internal crisis. The coalition that exiled us is fracturing." "Ah!" Drake smiled grimly. "They spent so much energy punishing us that they forgot to maintain their own alliances." Poetic. Commander Amy Brennan, now white-haired herself, entered the briefing room. She had stayed in service all these years, rising to become one of the most respected officers in the fleet. "Sir, there is something else. Our long-range sensors have detected Council scientists probing the dimensional membrane. They do not understand it yet, but they are beginning to suspect that something exists beyond normal space." Drake's expression hardened. How long until they figure it out? At their current rate of progress, decades at minimum. Their physics still tells them it is impossible. They are approaching it as a curiosity rather than a serious research priority. But eventually, they will understand. "Then it is time," Drake said. He had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. "We cannot allow them to discover us on their own terms. We reveal ourselves now, while we still control the narrative." The decision went up through the chain of command. reaching President Patricia Delgado, daughter of Maria Delgado, who had led humanity through the darkest days of the exile. Patricia had been a child when the barriers went up. She had grown into a woman of remarkable intelligence and determination, elected to continue her mother's work. "My mother always said this day would come," she told the assembly of leaders gathered to discuss the revelation. "She said that one day we would stand before the galaxy again, not as prisoners, but as equals. She did not live to see it, but she never doubted it would happen." Dr. Claire Watson, now 90 years old, and confined to a hover chair, but still leading the Advanced Sciences Division, presented the plan. "We have developed a dimensional beacon capable of broadcasting into normal space. The signal will be visible across the entire galaxy. Every species with the technology to detect it will know that humanity has returned." "What will the message say?" Patricia asked. "Whatever you want it to say, Madam President. But I suggest we make it clear that we are not asking permission to exist. We are informing them of a new reality." The beacon was constructed in orbit around Haven, a massive structure that pulsed with energy drawn from the outer reach itself. On the anniversary of the exile, exactly 25 years after the Galaxy Council had passed its judgment, humanity announced its return. Ambassador Lisa Grant had retired to the outer reach years ago. Her diplomatic career ended by the exile, but her spirit unbroken. At 93 years old, she was frail, but her mind was clear. And when President Delgado asked her to deliver the message, she accepted without hesitation. 25 years ago, she began, speaking into the recording device that would carry her words across dimensional boundaries and through the vastness of space. "You sentenced humanity to death by isolation. You believed yourselves superior. You believed we would wither and fade. You were wrong." The visual shifted to show the outer reach in all its glory. Cities floating in the void. Fleets of ships that dwarfed anything the elder races possessed. Billions of humans thriving in a realm the Council did not know existed. "We have built something you cannot imagine in a realm you cannot reach. We have become something you cannot comprehend. And now we offer you a choice." Lisa paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "You can accept humanity as equals. You can open relations, trade peaceful coexistence. You can acknowledge that your judgment was flawed, and move forward together into a future where all species benefit from cooperation." Her eyes hardened. "You can learn what happens when you make an enemy of a species that refuses to accept limitations. We do not seek war. We do not desire revenge. But we will not be ignored, and we will never again be caged. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, receivers picked up the signal. In the council chambers, alarms began to sound. On 1,000 worlds, beings of 100 different species stared at their screens in disbelief. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same in New Horizon. Rachel Morris watched the sensor readings showing the chaos spreading through council space. Ships were scrambling. Communications were exploding with traffic. Emergency sessions were being called. "They are afraid," Peter observed. "They should be," Rachel replied. "Not because we will hurt them, but because they just learned that everything they believed about the universe was wrong. The species they dismissed as dangerous children has become something beyond their ability to control or contain." She turned away from the window. "Now we see what they do with that fear, whether they choose wisdom or folly." The galaxy held its breath. The Galaxy Council had not assembled an emergency session for over a century. The Great Chamber that had once condemned humanity to exile now filled with representatives of 47 species, all of them struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The Velthary High Speaker, a younger being named Kareth, who had inherited the position from his predecessor, stood at the center of the chaos. His compound eyes reflected the holographic display, showing humanity's message on repeat. "This is impossible," he declared, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "The dimensional barriers are impenetrable. No species has ever escaped exile. The physics simply do not allow it." The Morthakai representative, its geometric form pulsing with unusual intensity, spoke in its echoing voice. "The physics, it seems, are less fixed than we believed. The humans have discovered something we missed, something fundamental about the nature of reality itself. Then we must find it too, Kareth insisted. We must learn how they did this and develop countermeasures. To what end? Asked the Torvath delegate, his rocky form shifting with what might have been anxiety. You saw their fleet? You saw their cities. They have been building for 20 years in a realm we cannot access. By the time we understand their technology, they will be another 20 years ahead of us. The chamber descended into argument. Some called for immediate military action, demanding that the council destroy the humans before they became an even greater threat. Others urged caution, pointing out that humanity had offered peace, and that attacking them might provoke exactly the war they hoped to avoid. In the end, it was the Morthakai who spoke the uncomfortable truth. How we created this situation. 25 years ago, we decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist among us. So we tried to eliminate them through isolation. Instead, we gave them exactly what they needed to surpass us. No distractions. No conflicts with other species. No limitations except the ones we imposed, which they have now overcome. The geometric patterns shifted in what might have been shame. We were afraid of what they might become. Our fear created the very thing we feared. And now we must decide whether to continue making the same mistake or to accept that we were wrong. The debate continued for days. Meanwhile, humanity waited. Admiral Samuel Drake did not live to see the council's response. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days after the revelation, having fulfilled the purpose that had driven him for a quarter century. His last words, spoken to Amy Brennan at his bedside, were simple. Do not let them waste this. Everything we built. Do not let them throw it away on revenge. Amy carried those words with her to the memorial service, where she spoke to the assembled crowds in New Horizon. Admiral Drake spent 25 years preparing for this moment. Not for war, not for revenge. For this, the chance to stand before the galaxy as equals and offer a better way. He believed that humanity was capable of more than hatred. He believed that we could take the worst thing that ever happened to us and turn it into something that would benefit not just ourselves, but every species in existence. Looked out at the millions of faces watching, in person and through broadcasts across both realms. The Council will make their decisions soon. Whatever they choose, we will respond with strength. But I hope, as Admiral Drake hoped, that we will also respond with wisdom. We have nothing to prove by destroying them. We have everything to gain by showing them that we are better than they believed, better than they were. The Council's response came 2 weeks later. It was not the declaration of war that some had feared, nor the complete surrender that others had hoped for. It was something more complicated. High Speaker Kareth appeared in a transmission that reached both normal space and the outer reach. The Galaxy Council acknowledges that humanity has survived and prospered, despite our efforts to contain them. We acknowledge that our judgment 25 years ago was based on fear rather than evidence. We acknowledge that we were wrong. Paused, his compound eyes reflecting emotions that humans could not read. We are not prepared to immediately grant humanity full membership in galactic society. The changes required would be too sudden, too destabilizing. But we are prepared to begin negotiations. Trade agreements, scientific exchange, the slow building of trust that may one day lead to genuine partnership. President Patricia Delgado watched the message with her advisors. When it ended, she turned to former Commander Derek Shaw, now retired but still consulted on matters of importance. What do you think? Derek considered the question carefully. He was an old man now, his hair white and his body frail. But his eyes still held the same determination that had driven him to lead the First Fleet into the outer reach. I think they are afraid, and they are buying time. But I also think there are some among them who genuinely want peace. The question is whether we give those voices a chance to win, or whether we assume the worst and prove them right about us. Patricia nodded slowly. Admiral Drake wanted us to be better than they expected. Yes, he did. Then that is what we will be. The negotiations began slowly, with distrust on both sides. Human ships entered normal space for the first time in 25 years, meeting council vessels at neutral locations. Diplomats who had never spoken to each other struggled to find common ground, but gradually progress was made. Trade routes opened between the outer reach and the galaxy. Human technology began spreading to species that had stagnated for millennia. Council knowledge helped humans understand aspects of their new realm that they had not yet explored. 5 years after the revelation, Ambassador Lisa Grant passed away in her home on Haven. She was 98 years old, and she had lived to see the first treaty signed between humanity and the Galaxy Council. Not full acceptance, but a beginning. At her memorial, Governor Rachel Morris spoke about the woman who had stood alone in the council chamber and promised that they would regret their decision. She was right, Rachel said. They did regret it, but not in the way anyone expected. They regret it because they missed out on 25 years of partnership with a species that could have helped them grow. They regret it because their fear cost them an ally and almost created an enemy. Ambassador Grant knew that this was the real tragedy of the exile. Not what was done to us, but what we could have built together if they had chosen differently. She looked out at the gathered crowd. Humans and now a small number of alien visitors who had come to pay their respects. We have a second chance now. Not to punish or to conquer, but to show the galaxy what humanity can be when we are free. Let us not waste it. In the years that followed, the outer reach continued to grow. New cities rose on new worlds. Human children grew up under alien stars, speaking languages that mixed English with words borrowed from physics that had no equivalent in normal space. The population passed 10 billion, then 20. Spreading across a realm that seemed to have no end, back in the galaxy, humanity's return changed everything. The old order of elder races and younger species, of established powers and contained threats, gave way to something more fluid and uncertain. Some species embraced the change, seeing opportunity where others saw danger. Others resisted, clinging to traditions that no longer made sense in a universe where the impossible had become routine. Humanity remained at the center of it all, no longer prisoners and not quite conquerors. Something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Patricia Delgado, in her final address as president, summarized what they had achieved. 25 years ago, we were told that our story was over. We were told that we had reached too far, dreamed too big, grown too strong. We were told that our punishment was to die slowly in a cage of their making. She smiled, looking out at a crowd that included humans and aliens standing side by side. We responded by building a realm beyond their imagination. We responded by becoming something they could not control. And when we had the power to destroy them, we offered peace instead. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. Dreamers, builders, survivors, and now, finally, equals. The crowd cheered, and the sound carried across worlds and dimensions. They had been exiled from the galaxy. They had built a better realm. And now, at last, they were home.